Spoiler alert for all the shit that I'm about to talk about in this video. Welcome to A James Bond Journey, a series where I discuss my thoughts and opinions on the James Bond series after having watched it for the first time ever. And today, we're here to talk about the second era of James Bond, the Roger Moore era. Roger Moore was an established television actor before he got the role. As I've said previously in another one of these videos, Moore played James Bond previously as a joke in a comedy TV series called Mainly Millicent. Well, around the time Connery was trying to leave the role and the George Lazenby fiasco, Moore became a top contender for the permanent replacement to Connery. Roger Moore went on to play Bond in 7 films from 1973 until 1985, giving him the record for most official Bond films, as well as the second longest tenure of any Bond actor. Moore's performance as Bond is solid and strange at the same time. He sells it as best he can with what he's given. He's easily the most aloof of the Bonds, playing the role straight but with a lot of humor. His performance as Bond is notably also the most far-fetched. What I mean by that is, well, let me give you a comparison. In these movies, when women throw themselves at Sean Connery, I believe them, because it's Sean Connery. But when women throw themselves at Roger Moore, I don't believe them as much, because he's Roger Moore. Look at him. What didn't help was that Moore was first cast as Bond at age 44. This is about the age most actors end their time as Bond. So by the time Octopussy and A View to a Kill rolled around, Moore looked rough. One of the biggest reasons he finally hung up the suit was because even he thought it was absurd that a guy his age was hooking up with these young-ass Bond girls. But there was one advantage Moore did have over every other Bond actor: enthusiasm. He may not be my favorite Bond, but he brought a genuine affability and warmness to the role that no other actor ever did. He was like if your uncle played James Bond. Moore genuinely loved playing this character. That's why he did it for so long. He may be the Bond actor least known for his roles outside of playing Bond, but this guy never turned down a single fan who came up to him for an autograph, at least by all accounts. He relished 007. One thing that would work for and against Moore would be the era he was playing Bond in. 70s Bond was, for lack of a better word, fucking insane. This was the campy era of Bond, with very high highs and very low lows. Sometimes Moore would be in a movie that was genuinely well put together and had some serious draw. Sometimes he would be in a movie that had none of these things. This era of Bond was like a box of chocolates. You never knew what you were gonna get. But one thing I noticed is very strong about this era of Bond is that this is the era that is defined by villains who want to put Bond into some elaborate, escapable trap instead of just shooting him. Like, shoot him. He's right there.
I have a gun in my room. You give me 5 seconds, I'll get it. I'll come back down here. Boom! I'll blow their brains out.
And if there is ever a movie to truly exemplify how truly bizarre James Bond was in this era, it was Live and Let Die is fucking bonkers. It is legitimately one of the most insane movies I have ever seen. It is certainly the strangest debut movie of a new Bond. I don't think there is any other Bond film that takes itself less seriously than this one. They were embracing the silliness in this one. But despite everything I am about to reveal about this film, I want you to remember one very important thing. Live and Let Die is, by far, the funniest James Bond film ever made. It is fucking dumb, barely makes any sort of cohesive sense, and yet every intentional or unintentional thing this movie does had me laughing. So the film opens with the song that everyone remembers about it most, Live and Let Die by Wings. Now, this opening title sequence actually does fit the weird-ass all-over-the-place energy that the film has, but then as you continue to watch the movie, the song is utilized in weird spots in the film that don't always match its vibe. You know this experience is going to be way different when the movie opens with this funeral parade. Then a guy gets whacked, and just watch this. It should be noted that this movie is a blaxploitation movie. If you don't believe me, just watch this scene.
Is this the stupid mother that tailed you uptown?
There seems to be some mistake. My name is...
Names is for tombstones, baby.
I don't know why, but James Bond walking into a bar in 1970s Harlem just tickles the shit out of my funny bone. It also has elements of fantasy. This is the only Bond movie that has supernatural elements to it. The Bond girl, Solitaire, is a tarot card reader. And tarot is real in this movie. So is voodoo, apparently. There's a scene where Bond shoots Baron Samedi in the head, and he turns out to be a statue. Then the real Baron Samedi comes up, and Bond fights him without a gun, for some reason, and throws him into a coffin full of snakes. Then it shows him again at the end, still alive and laughing. There's a hook-handed henchman who hides in a mailbag at the end of the film, and since when does 007 call a cab? The way Bond lands Solitaire by telling her that he was in the cards was pretty funny. This is also, to my knowledge, the only time James Bond ever takes a girl's virginity. And it takes away her powers. This is a major plot point of the film. There's a scene in the beginning of the film where 007 is sitting against a wall, then the wall spins around, revealing the villain's lair. So later on, suspicious of walls, he sits away from the wall, and his table sinks into the floor. This movie rules. The main villain, Kananga, is kinda cool. He's the first villain who was a drug dealer, which was a very 70s issue. I love how low the stakes are in this one. He also has an alter ego named Mr. Big for absolutely no reason. And the reveal that he and Mr. Big are the same person is him just peeling off his face disguise. Oh, and by the way, the guy who did the crocodile stunt in this movie was also named Kananga, and he owned the crocodile farm they filmed at, and the villain was named after him. There is a hillbilly sheriff character who is involved in a, frankly, fucking awesome chase scene involving the bad guys and the cop cars trying to catch up to a boat. And the cops' plan to catch the boat is to just stand on a bridge. That's it. The strangest thing about this movie is that it somehow still does feel like a James Bond movie. There are some amazing looking scenes in this movie, and there are some really dumb bad looking scenes. Like the scene where Kananga dies. The villain's death in this movie is one of the funniest death scenes I have ever watched in a film. I have no words. Just watch it. I love this movie. What else is there to say about this movie? I love Live and Let Die, and most of the reason I love it is for the wrong reasons. Or the right ones? I don't know what they were going for here, but it's wild. This is the first 007 movie where the title of the film has nothing to do with it. And that fits about as well as anything else about it. Alright, we finally arrived at a universally hated James Bond film. At least to hardcore fans of this franchise. Not by me, though. I don't hate The Man with the Golden Gun. Though I will say the song is terrible. Golden Gun is kinda like Live and Let Die in that it is one of the crazy ones, but it doesn't hit anywhere near the highs of that movie. It does hit a couple, though. So right off the bat, the villain is Christopher Lee, and the henchman is Tattoo from Fantasy Island. We have finally reached the inspiration for Mini-Me. Also, Scaramanga is famously the Bond villain with 3 nipples. And his 3 nipples are actually the first thing we see in the movie. Bond later uses this detail to disguise himself as Scaramanga. So Scaramanga is testing himself in some kind of fun house inside his mansion. He wants to kill James Bond, but to my memory, it's never revealed why. It's also revealed that he and Knick-Knack have a very weird relationship wherein Knick-Knack is openly trying to kill him so he can inherit the island. Also, in the very beginning of the film, Bond summarizes Scaramanga's entire life.
The man with the golden gun. Born in a circus, father the ringmaster, possibly Cuban, mother English, a snake charmer.
Oh, and the hillbilly sheriff returns. That's cool. A recurring minor character and one of the ones I really liked from the last movie. Oh, and of course, the very infamous scene in this film where a really cool car stunt is completely ruined by a slide whistle playing over it. This one scene is one of the most hated scenes in Bond history. And there are so many worse ones. I don't know why people consider this one bottom of the barrel. It's stupid, but it ain't boring. There is a scene in this movie where James Bond needs to hotwire a car, and this motherfucker can't hotwire a car? You're James Bond. I think this is worse than the slide whistle. I gotta admit, the MI6 headquarters in the sunken ship was fucking cool as hell. Sorry, I just really appreciate the set design choice. And of course, the climax of the film is a duel between Bond and Scaramanga, the only such climax in the history of James Bond. Of course, Bond wins. And then the actual final fight in this film is Knick-Knack running around a room, followed by the film making us think that Bond threw him overboard in a suitcase. But no, he just tied him to the ship. My biggest takeaway from The Man with the Golden Gun, and I think the biggest problem most people have with this one, is why. This movie had me asking why a lot. Why does Scaramanga use the golden gun? What's its importance? Why does he put people through this weird funhouse? Why does he let a henchman who wants to kill him live with him? Why does Bond know everything about him, including that he has a third nipple? Why does he have the third nipple? Why did someone think a slide whistle was okay to put into a Bond movie? Why can't James Bond hotwire a fucking car? Why was this movie a half-ass adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game? Man with the Golden Gun is not the worst Bond movie, at least not in my opinion. I mean, one thing I can say about it is it's not boring, but it also doesn't go full ham enough on its wacky shit to be anywhere near as good as Live and Let Die. By the way, it is wild that Guy Hamilton directed Goldfinger and then directed Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, and this movie. Like, how do you direct Goldfinger and then those three? Also, this was the final Bond film that Saltzman was associated with. For the rest of the series, it belonged to the Broccolis. If I had been watching these movies as they came out, 1977 would have been a big year for me. The last truly great Bond film before this one, in my opinion, was You Only Live Twice, which would have been a decade old at this point. Since then, imagining You Are Me, it's been one disappointment after another, with the exception of Live and Let Die, which I love, but for the opposite reason that I love most Bond movies. But then, in 1977, it finally happened. After waiting 10 years, I finally would have seen another truly awesome Bond film. I finally would have seen a great Bond film that did not star Sean Connery, which this is. The Spy Who Loved Me is one of my all-time favorite James Bond films. And sorry, early spoiler, but it's easily my favorite film from the Moore era. It was the first film in 10 years to truly feel like a Bond film. And it even did some things better than what had come before. For example, this film has, thus far and for a long time after, the absolute greatest Bond girl and love story in the series. A lot of the Moore films would be advertised as 007 finally meets his match, and that's bullshit. He only met his match once. Ever. And it was with Anya Amasova, Agent XXX, played by Barbara Bach. She is the Russian James Bond, his opposite number, his counterpart, which makes their romance feel real, like she was meant for him. For all you people who keep going on about On Her Majesty's Secret Service had the best love story, you're all idiots. This is how you do a James Bond love story.
When this mission is over, I will kill you.
And part of what makes this so good is the fact that they're technically competing. And Triple X has a personal vendetta against Bond. He killed the person she loved in the line of duty. She wants revenge against him and falls for him at the same time, while also needing to work with him for the greater good. This is great writing for a Bond film. And this isn't even the part of the movie people remember the most. That honor goes to one of, if not the, most iconic James Bond henchman of all time. Jaws. Jaws is downright brutal and fucking terrifying. This guy is Jason Voorhees. He is a hulking giant who kills people savagely. And how? With a gun? No. With a knife? No. With his steel-plated teeth. This guy fucking bites people to death. There is a scene where Jaws rips a van apart with Bond and Triple X inside of it. And of course, while this is happening, they trade one-liners, and it's perfect, because this movie finally figured out how to work the campiness into a Bond movie perfectly. There is a jump scare where Jaws suddenly appears in a closet, and it's genuinely fucking scary. This actually scared me. And then Jaws helps 007 get laid after. There's a scene where a bullet ricochets off of Jaws' teeth. In his final scene, after being defeated, he fights his way out of a shark tank by biting the shark to death. Man bites shark. A man named Jaws bites a shark to death. 2 years after the movie Jaws came out. This shit was wild. And for the only time, a Bond henchman escapes and is seen again in the next movie. And, though Jaws steals the show, the main villain Stromberg also rules. His intro is amazing. The shark tank, the music, his weird spider ship rising out of the water. His plan is also unbelievably insane and could only work during this era of Bond. Destroy the world and begin anew at sea. Also, he dies one of my favorite deaths in the series. How many other Bond villains can you name who got shot in the dick? This movie also has one of the greatest opening title sequences ever. There's a ski chase, the best of all of the many ski chases in these movies, by the way, that culminates in an iconic cliff jump for a very uncomfortable number of seconds before a parachute finally opens, revealing the British flag, which then transitions to the title sequence. Which also fucking rules because the song is Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon, one of the all-time great Bond songs. I'd also like to point out that this is my favorite silhouetted title sequence of any Bond film. During the Moore era, they started really getting into title sequences that made heavy use of silhouettes, and these title sequences definitely get a little boring after this movie. This is the only Bond movie that has tits in it. They're on a poster on a wall in the opening scene. Though we do get to see some side boob from Agent Triple X later on. There are parts of the film that still maintain the camp that I come to associate with this era, but in the right amounts. There's a scene where they play the Lawrence of Arabia theme, the people Jaws kills aren't very bloodied up. Like, if this guy is going around ripping throats out with his teeth, the bodies he leaves behind would not look this neat. I love the Egyptian setting and M's office in the Valley of the Kings. I love the car turning into a submarine. And I'm glad for once Q didn't explain this gadget. It's cool that this was a surprise. The Spy Who Loved Me is a great, great movie. For me, it finally took this new, campier Bond to the same heights that this series had been waiting for since the Connery era. It may be the crown jewel of the Moore era, but it was not the only great Moore Bond film. However, that next great one wouldn't come for a little while. Okay, Moonraker is another one of the ones that gets a lot of hate, and I totally get it. I wasn't fond of this one. The irony of Moonraker is that despite everything else that happens in the entire fucking movie, the opening scene of this movie is fucking incredible. The whole thing is in free fall. It's so fucking good, and is by far the greatest scene in the whole film. It's one of the best scenes in any Bond film. It's so good that I didn't even care that Jaws' stunt double was an Asian guy with white teeth. And see, that's the problem with Moonraker. There are moments in it that are really good, but overall, the movie is dumb and boring. They ruined Jaws. I mean, that's common knowledge about this movie. Jaws was the only Bond henchman in history to ever return for another movie. And in this movie, he's played for laughs, falls in love, and helps Bond escape at the end. On a list of things I don't want Jaws to do, fall in love is second only to start a family. Apparently, director Lewis Gilbert received fan mail from kids asking him to make Jaws a good guy in the next one, so he did. Why the fuck are you listening to what children have to say about a James Bond fucking movie? I think Hugo Drax is a dumb villain. This isn't helped by the fact that his plan is the exact fucking same as Stromberg's. He just wants to restart humanity in space instead of at sea. But his reasons are odd. He also could have shot Bond right after he shot the assassin in the tree. Why do you need a guy in a tree to kill him? Just shoot him. Here's some good stuff in this movie. The flight test was harrowing. The girl getting torn apart by dogs is brutal. I'd still like an answer why a director who included this scene in the movie listened to children give him advice on how to write Jaws. The knife guy in the coffin was funny. Jaws' balls are steel too. This scene actually made me laugh out loud. Despite the fact that I don't like Drax, his death is one of the top tier Bond villain deaths. I like Dr. Goodhead's name. Here's some more bad stuff in this movie. The film's pacing sucks. Nothing happens in the middle hour of this movie. The Aztec temple scene is one of the most awkward scenes ever. Bond knows these girls work for Drax. He's seen them before. Why is he just standing there? Draw your fucking gun. Shoot them. They play the theme song from The Magnificent Seven. I can forgive stealing another movie's music score once, not twice in a row. Plus, where'd they even get the horses and the outfits? There is a scene where they're riding on a canoe being paddled by a gondola man. Then it's revealed the canoe is motorized. This canoe was not Q's. Q did not make this. How did he know it would have a motor? Why did it need a gondola man if it had a motor? Moonraker is a frustrating movie. When it's exciting, it's exciting. When it's stupid, it's sometimes funny, but overall it's fucking boring and way too hit or miss. But at least when it hits, it does hit. Unlike. For Your Eyes Only is a marker for one of the lowest points in this franchise. This one is real bad. A weak-ass fucking movie. You can tell that this movie was made by people who just did not give a single fuck about what they were making. And I don't mean in a let's do something wacky, zany kind of way. I mean in a let's crank out another Bond movie kind of way. Here is the opening scene of this movie. Bond is visiting his dead wife, who is still Teresa, and We Have All the Time in the World is on the grave. So this confirms that the ending of Majesty is still canonical lore in the Roger Moore Bond universe. After 4 whole fucking movies where it's not mentioned in any way, shape, or form, then Blofeld appears with a trap out of nowhere. And Bond just fucking unceremoniously kills him. And I hate this. Blofeld has not been in the Moore universe at all. He has not even been mentioned in 4 whole fucking movies. Then he appears out of nowhere, and Bond just kills his most famous enemy from a completely different era of Bond in the opening scene without even showing his face, as if he wasn't important in any way after just showing his dead wife's grave who Blofeld fucking murdered. Oh, also, why is the singer on camera in the opening credits? That's fucking weird. The Bond girl in this movie is my least favorite in the entire franchise. Why? Look, I don't have a lot of requirements for a Bond girl, but one of them is being attractive. That's a series staple. And it is revealed in the opening scene of this movie that this Bond girl has a mustache. Ew! Nobody watching this shot thought we can't have a Bond girl with a mustache go in your trailer and handle that shit? They just kept it in the film? Part of this film even takes place at the same ski resort as Majesty's. Like, what was the obsession with that movie in this one? And in yet another ode to that movie, the ski chase scene in this movie is way too fucking long again. And enough of these fucking ski chases. There was only one good ski chase in any of these movies. I'm tired of watching Bond do snow shit. There's even a bobsled scene. Is this just a fucking sequel to Majesties? Bond keeps telling the girl that revenge won't make her feel better, but you look pretty happy when you drop Blofeld into a smokestack in the beginning of the fucking movie. So the Greek guy kills the bad guy before the girl can take her revenge, and then the Russian guy is just like, whatever. I think this is the worst ending in the series. It's fucking terrible. And so is this movie. For Your Eyes Only may not be my least favorite James Bond flick, but it's really, really fucking close. The things I said in this review should paint a picture of how lazy the writing and editing and proof watching was in this movie. The people making it just did not fucking care at all. They just wanted to crank out a Bond movie with no real identity. And the result is a fucking turd. I hate this movie. So after a couple dumpster fires, I didn't have high hopes for the Bond film with the worst name in the entire franchise. Seriously, Octopussy? Why did you name the movie that? So imagine my surprise when I watched it and it turned out to be my second favorite Moore film. It's a really good one, and I think it's actually the least campy Moore film. It honestly feels more like a Connery film than any other Bond movie from this era. Even the one with Connery that we're going to talk about next. The plane invasion is a cool opening, and the backgammon scene is a great villain intro. And I love Kamal Khan in general. I love how much pretension he conveys whenever he talks, like he thinks he's slick. Great villain. The chase scenes in this one actually feel claustrophobic. There are people on these streets. Lots of them. Someone could get hurt. Though I do love the one where they make use of the street performers. That bed of nails part makes me cringe. And that stuffed sheep's head was genuinely fucking gross. The eyeballs, ew. It's almost as gross as this fucking girl's mustache. Sorry, I had to. The scene where Bond is getting hunted in the jungle is cool. And how the fuck did he escape that gorilla costume so fast? They also brought back Maud Adams to play Octopussy. She was in The Man with the Golden Gun as Scaramanga's mistress. Is it bad that I didn't even catch that until long after I watched these movies? There is a yo-yo weapon that has to be one of the craziest, unwieldiest weapons in the series. You know, aside from the bug assassins. I kinda love it though. The plans the bad guys make in this one are actually pretty ingenious. Khan and Orlov sort of play off of each other's personal interests, and the way that they use Octopussy to transport a nuke that she thinks is Jules to West Germany is pretty cool. The plan comes together in a great moment that makes it all make sense. Okay, so this needs to be said. This is the one where Bond dresses like a clown. This is the most memed moment in Bond history. Intended to make Bond look stupid, but this scene is actually fucking cool as shit. There's a circus performer fight. And the film culminates in one of my favorite climaxes of any of these films. The airplane scene. The opening of Moonraker is essentially the climax of Octopussy. This is how you do it. This is an amazing fucking scene. It is one of the best looking scenes in the series and shows how far the series has come up to this point. Octopussy is one that surprised me with how good it was. I really like this one. Oh, also, this was the first M to not be played by Bernard Lee, who died in 1981. Rest in peace, King. So remember how in the last video I told you the history of Thunderball? This is the part where all those chickens come home to roost. So that McClure guy I mentioned, he retained the rights to Thunderball on the condition that he not make any adaptation of the novel for 10 years after the original Thunderball movie. And in 1983, he finally re-released this story in the second, and so far, final, non-canonical, non-Eon produced James Bond film. But who would they get to play Bond in this one? Roger Moore was of course busy making real James Bond films. Well, the person they got to play Bond was Sean fucking Connery. He was brought back to play James Bond for the final time in his career, 12 years after he swore he'd never play the role again, and that is where the title comes from. So Sean Connery played Bond in the same story twice, because Never Say Never Again is Thunderball, but with a twist. It's a better movie. It is so much more entertaining. Never Say Never Again is a genuinely fun, stupid movie that would have honestly fit right in with the Roger Moore movies aside from the parts that do feel like direct parody. For example, there is a scene where Blofeld's henchmen happen to be staying right across the street from where Bond is staying. He sees a part of their plan unfold, and then fucks up and immediately gets spotted. That's funny. The real Bond wouldn't do that. There's a scene where a janitor gets choked out in like 5 seconds. There is a scene where a guy dies when James Bond splashes piss in his face, and then he falls backwards onto a bunch of glass instruments, which is one of the funniest Bond deaths of all time. The lady assassin throws a snake in his car to make him fly off the road, then presses a button and his car explodes. So why the snake? Rowan Atkinson is in this movie. So is Kim Basinger. And Max von Sydow is Blofeld. And the guy playing Largo looks like Jeffrey Dahmer. And Connery is not even hiding his Scottish accent this time. There is an inferred sex scene intercut with scenes of Fish with sax music playing. There is a scene where Bond is playing a video game against the bad guy. He wins after losing 3 times in a row, then gives up a $200,000 prize just to dance with the bad guy's girlfriend. What a G. He makes a guard hold a fake bomb in a pretty cruel scene where he scares the shit out of this man for no reason. Fatima is a great henchman. Her death is great, the chase sequences are great, Largo is even great this time around. And naturally, Sean Connery winks at the camera at the end. He's allowed to do that in this one. This whole movie is a joke. What a flick. So we have arrived at the final Roger Moore movie. Moore and Connery are now tied for number of Bond movies, though Moore still has the record for official Bond movies. So what do I have to say about one of the most divisive Bond movies? I really like this one. You may be surprised to learn that, given all the shit this one gets. I mean, everyone in this series looks ancient at this point. 007, Moneypenny, Q. Roger Moore looks especially old, and his mole is gone for some reason. The film opens with a Beach Boys song to yet another ski chase. Why do you keep putting ski chases in these movies? And then it just cuts back to serious music immediately. Mayday is probably the most divisive Bond henchman of all time, and she is very strange. She looks horrifying, and she and Bond bang with absolutely no buildup of any kind. They're enemies, and haven't exchanged 5 words, and I guess Bond is so sexually magnetic that this woman just went into his room and he was like, okay, we can fuck. Bond doesn't even act like himself here. What's with the fly fishing line? You just told him who you are with that line. You might as well have just said, I'm James Bond. So why do I like this one so much? 2 words. Christopher Walken. Max Zorin is one of my all-time favorite Bond villains, and he elevates this movie so much higher. He's so needlessly evil. And there are other good parts of the movie. The guy falling out of the blimp was funny. Bond trying not to break the vase during the fight was funny. The climax at the Golden Gate Bridge is awesome. It has the dumbest sex puns so far. I like this one. What can I say? It's dumb, but it's entertaining. And guys, that is the end of the Roger Moore era of James Bond. The man who loved playing the character the most, even when these movies were giving him dog shit to go off of. An era of high highs and low lows. An era defined by its camp, wackiness, and zaniness. And this really is the only era of Bond defined by those things. There would be dumb Bond movies again after this. Absolutely there would be. But no other era would ever replicate the insanity of this one. This was a completely unique time in this franchise. It was the only era where Bond was silly most of the time, not occasionally. Silly was the norm. But after Moore left, people decided that things would need to change. Bond needed a facelift. So stay tuned, because next time, we'll be talking about the next 2 actors who played Bond. But that can wait until tomorrow. After all, tomorrow never dies.